Hello to everyone that's still watching this channel. I realize I haven't made a video here for some time, and I'm going to be making a few more this summer. And I'm going to start with this one. And this video is going to be regarding how to pick the right truck and camper for you, whether you should buy new or should buy used, and all the other aspects concerning that. Regarding the costs of these things, they're very expensive, trucks and campers, so I can't comment on everyone's budget, whether you have to finance or not. I'm going to just comment on probably the best way to approach it. And I'll start with trucks. Truck campers belong in trucks. That's why they're called truck campers. So whether you choose new or used trucks, it'll be up to you. Again, you might want warranty, and I appreciate that. Or you might want to save a lot of money, and I appreciate that. I've done both. I've owned trucks from all three major brands, of all kinds of different sizes, and I've also owned new and used truck campers. So there are pros and cons to each. So the first thing that I think anyone considering this type of RV should do is to pick out their vehicle first, because then you'll know your capacities. And regarding the style of vehicle you should pick out, whether it's single rear wheel or dual rear wheel, I know there's a lot of controversy and bias around each, and I'm going to tell you what I think. And these are my personal opinions, and anybody can do it any way they want. Having owned, this is probably my sixth truck now, I think. It's my first dual rear wheel truck though. Having owned single rear wheel trucks with truck campers, I believe a dual rear wheel truck is simply the stablest and best option for any of the larger truck campers. And notice I said larger, because there are smaller truck campers that are very light. If you're buying a big camper, you need a big truck to set it on. And I think the minimum in a truck is a 1-ton single rear wheel. And I think ideally that should be 2 rear wheels on each side, dually. And I know some people like driving their trucks to get the groceries and to the kids to school and whatnot. Mine's a dedicated platform for hauling, so I don't have to concern myself with that. Can you make a single rear wheel truck hold up an 1150 Arctic Fox? You probably could if you change the rims and the tires and put airbags on it and a bunch of other stuff. But the best way to tow a camper down the road is just with the weight of the springs you have. A good set of quality springs without any bags is simply the best way, the most comfortable way to haul any kind of big load, unless you're got a 40-foot gooseneck with farm equipment on it and bales and stuff like that. So I think you should choose an 8-foot bed. I know that's controversy right there. A long box truck and a minimum of 1 ton. Whether you get single or duals, that's up to you, because you can get lightweight campers that'll fit just fine in a single rear wheel truck. And whether you choose gas or diesel will also affect the load. A diesel like this reduces its capacity to haul because the engine weighs more than a gas motor. I'm not going to get into the big gas versus diesel debate, because that's an entire video all in itself, but I'm just going to say, as far as capacities go, and you can save a little money by getting a gas motor. It's not as a nice a driving experience, but it will do the job. Personally, I don't believe, as a mechanic, I don't run airbags. I've worked on a lot of those systems. They're finicky, they cause rough riding. You got to inflate them side to side individually. It is not an expert's platform by any means, but it is just another thing you have to worry about. If I was running a single rear wheel with a moderate sized camper, I'd get custom springs built for the back and then be done with it. And there's no extra unnecessary parts on that camper. But whatever your truck you choose, I would get a long box, because it does not limit your choice of campers. There's a lot of short box trucks running around out there with long box campers on them. We've all seen that. And yeah, that's not ideal. And the short box campers, although nice, are limited in options and layouts. So if you're going to go to a truck camper and you want to get the most bang for your buck, I'd get a long bed truck. Whatever make you choose, whatever brand you choose, but it'd have to be a minimum of a 1 ton in order not to have to band-aid the suspension up to make it go down the road safely. I know that's debatable. Put your comments in the section below if you want to comment on that, but that's my personal belief. As far as the campers go, new versus used, I've done both. I've certainly got a lot of enjoyment out of used campers. If you're buying a used camper, you better know what you're looking at, and you better know how to fix it. If you're going to buy a newer truck camper that's used, and I consider newer anything within 10 years. And I would consider, if you're buying a used camper, I wouldn't go older than 10 years. I know there's lots of good campers out there that are older than 10 years. I've owned them, and they were good campers. But I would stick to 10 years or newer, mainly because of the roof. And everything starts, I'm big on roof maintenance, everything starts from the roof down. And if you don't maintain that roof, or if the previous owner hasn't maintained it, it causes endless issues within the entire camper. So I would absolutely make certain, if you don't know what you're looking at, pay to have someone get up there and have a look and make sure it's all squared away up there and everything's been done right, because you don't want to drag home a 10-year-old camper that you have to be putting a new rubber membrane on the roof. That'll cost you a lot of money, and it could be all torn up from trees and scratches and no one knows what. So get up there and have a look at it. But 10 years or older is where I would draw the line. As far as brands go, I've had 2 Arctic Foxes. I really like them. They're very well-built campers. They are heavy, and some people consider the styling somewhat dated, but I like it. I think they're very solid campers. I've also owned a Bigfoot, and I've seen Northern Lights around here that are in very good condition. The fiberglass versus this type of construction is also debatable. Do not be fooled thinking that fiberglass campers last forever, because they don't. They delaminate, they leak, and they rot, just like these campers. Not in the same way, but sometimes in a more expensive way, but they do come apart and they do fail. I have seen it. I have repaired fiberglass on truck campers. I'm not going to say which brands, and it is an expensive, time-consuming job. So if you're going to buy an older camper, I would stick with 10 years or newer just to keep your costs down, because if you're going to have to paint and do fiberglass repairs on a big camper, it's going to cost a lot of money. Older campers also have manual jacks. That saves you money. There's nothing wrong with manual jacks that don't have a remote. You can pump them up and down, and they're lightweight, and they work, and they're very simple. And a lot of people use them, and they're just fine. So don't be scared off if it's an older camper with manual jacks. Just make sure that all the components are working correctly, because if you have to start replacing jacks, speaking of working correctly, if you're really not mechanically inclined, take someone with you or pay to have it inspected, because everything from the jacks and where those jacks mount to on the camper needs to be examined for damage, because that is an essential part of the truck camper where those jacks are attached. Lots of campers are running around with rotted out portions underneath those jacks. Some have been damaged from parking lot accidents, and you need to make sure that those things are intact and they're working. Otherwise, it's going to be an endless nightmare trying to keep that thing stable and safe when you're loading it and unloading it. And you're also going to have to figure whether or not you want, if you're going to buy a new camper, do you want slides or do you want a straight-walled camper? I like both, and I've had both. I do like the simplicity of the straight-walled camper without a slide. I really like that layout. It's nice and cozy, and there's nothing to go wrong. However, this camper has a slide, and my last 990 also did, and I enjoy the benefit of the extra space. And I'm not going to want to compromise with how much living space I actually have. But if you're going to a camper with slides, you're going to need a big truck, because slides add a lot of weight. And some of these campers have more than one slide. I've seen campers with 3 slides. So if you're going that big, this truck is an F450. So it's bigger than a 1-ton. And there's a lot of equivalent trucks in different brands that'll match that. So you have to decide, is it worth it? Do you want to buy such a giant, expensive truck to haul your huge camper if you can get by with a smaller living space? So if you pick out a large camper, you have to pick out a large truck. Now, more about the camper you choose after you've picked out your long bed 1-ton truck. Brands matter, I guess, somewhat. From my perspective, I've owned a lot of different campers and I've owned a lot of different brands. But RVs in general are built very poorly, I believe, and I think I could do a better job myself building it if I was to build one. Everything from a $600,000 Tiffin motor coach to this Arctic Fox and everything in between and below it, they're all built about the same quality, which is to say, not very good. Fit and finish problems are not uncommon in any RV you buy. My camper's very good, but does it have stuff that could be better? It certainly does. I've never seen a camper that was built anywhere near the quality of the home you're living in. So be aware of that, and be aware that even if you buy a brand new camper off the lot and you take it home, you might be fixing something on it yourself because you don't want to drive back and forth to the dealership and wait in a line. So having a little maintenance in mind when you get into this is handy. But by paying more for absolute premium brand, thinking you're going to get a better experience as far as quality, I believe that's a fallacy. And I've kind of seen it over the years and had it proven to me myself that it doesn't necessarily mean because you're paying triple what someone else is paying, you're getting a better product. You might be getting more expensive components, but how those components are assembled and the care they took in assembling the whole RV, no matter what type of RV it is, has to be considered. And I believe that 4 or 5 years ago, when the situation in the world had changed, things were getting built at a different rate and with a different respect for quality. So there's a short period of time in there where I would say avoid a camper like that. However, this camper was built in 2022 or 2023. I can't remember how old my camper is. It is very good. So, and I've heard some people say their camper built the same year as this one, they've had things falling apart on it. But I do believe things fall apart on all of these campers, no matter what type of camper, and you have to keep that in mind when you're buying it. And when you're buying an old camper, not an older, let's say a 5-year-old camper like this, that someone's owned and maintained correctly for the last 4 years, you're probably getting something that you won't have to do any maintenance on for quite some time because it's been looked after and all the minor problems that came out of the factory are repaired. Another thing a lot of people forget about buying a truck and a truck camper, you pick out your truck and it costs X amount of dollars. And you pick out your camper and that costs X amount of dollars. And you add those two together and you're happy. Well, it doesn't quite end there. There are accessories and things, yes, you can get for your truck camper. But to fit that camper to your particular truck can add up to a lot of money very quickly. You'll need a rubber bed mat at the minimum. You're going to need tie downs for the truck and frame mounts for those tie downs for the truck. These things can add up, those 3 items can add up to $2,000 or $3,000 very quickly if you're choosing high quality items. I don't recommend turnbuckles on a camper that aren't spring loaded because they'll tear the mounts out of your camper and you don't want that. I already know the vast majority of people with truck campers are going to say, you're wrong and we want single rear wheel trucks. They work just fine. I get it. I've been there, I've done that. I had 4 single rear wheel F350s in the past. So I know what they can do, very capable trucks. I'm not going to debate that. So if you're going to go down that road and buy a single rear wheel truck of any brand, it's nice if it has the camper package built into it from the factory. Is it necessary? No, but it means you're getting the sway bars you need because you need big sway bars front and rear with a truck camper, otherwise it's going to sway all over the road. A long bed is going to give you far better stability in crosswinds than a short bed, even with sway bars on both. It's just the extra wheelbase is more stable. A dually like that makes driving in crosswinds a breeze because it's just like driving anything else, and it's very, very stable. So when you're buying your single rear wheel truck, try and ensure it has the camper package. If it doesn't, budget for sway bars. If you want to build this into a safe hauling vehicle, figure another $1,500 for sway bars for it, front and rear. And then, of course, being a single rear wheel, if you're putting a big camper on it, first of all, I wouldn't recommend it. This camper's 5,000 pounds and it doesn't belong on a single rear, but you can get different rims, different tires. That can safely haul somewhat of a larger camper in the 3,500 pound range, and you can safely do that. Springs aren't going to be happy about it out back. So then you're going to want to run airbags. Like everybody else will tell you, run airbags. All I can say about the airbag situation is if you don't know how to do that yourself, get it done professionally and realize that an airbag is transferring that load directly to the frame. Now, it's not increasing the capacity of your springs. It's putting that load on the frame, and it can make for a somewhat jarring and somewhat rattly ride if you're pumping these bags up too high. Personally, I would get probably a set of Deaver springs and put them in the back and forget about it, not have to monkey with airbags and lines. But if you want to put airbags in because you want to preserve a better ride for all the times that the camper's not on the truck, yeah, that's an option. You can do airbags. A lot of people have them, and a lot of people like them, and a lot of people get rid of them. Another question that pops up is can I do this inexpensively? Well, that's a relative term. It's going to cost some money. Can you do it? Yes. There's a lot of people out there with mechanical skills that can keep their junk rolling down the road, and yeah, you can do it, and you can do it safely. If I wanted to do this really inexpensively, and I have in the past, what I would do, this is my personal opinion, what I would buy would be a 20-year-old 1-ton Ford with a V10 Triton. Those are great engines, in my opinion, and they're cheap, and it would be a long box, and I would buy probably an older Bigfoot, fiberglass Bigfoot for the back of it, because they're fairly light, and you don't want to load single rear wheels heavy. Then I wouldn't have to modify the suspension at all, probably. If the suspension was sagged out on this particular old truck I bought, I would spend $500 and get a couple of spring packs built for the back and take care of that whole problem. I could probably pick the camper up in Canada here, a Bigfoot like that, for about $5,000, maybe $6,000 for a real nice one. And a truck like that would probably cost, in Canada here, that old, probably about $6,000 to $7,000 if I shopped around. So I could probably get into a nice, I'm talking nicer stuff too, not rusted out garbage and beat up campers. I could probably do it for 15 grand or so in Canada here. Cheaper in America, but the campers are probably more in America than they are in Canada. So you're going to pay less for your truck, but more for the camper. I wouldn't buy a diesel of those years. I'm not fond of those engines. I'm not going to debate that here. I would buy that simple gas-powered 1-ton long box and put an old Bigfoot in the back of it. I would not buy a camper from the 90s or early 2000s that wasn't fiberglass, because most of them, even Arctic Foxes back then, are wood frame. And I'm not a fan of wood frame truck campers because of all the vibration they get going down the road. They shake and rattle loose. They're 1x3 and 1x1 and 2x2 wood walls, and I'm not a big fan of that. I know there are some people using them and they're very nice. I get it. I just wouldn't go that way. But yeah, you could do this cheaply. You could do this for probably $15,000 if you shopped around right now, because the economy's not doing so good and there's a lot of people motivated to sell stuff. Speaking of that, if you wanted to spend more money but not new money, you could get late model stuff that people are motivated to sell. There's a lot of people out there that are going through some financial hard times right now in Canada and probably in America too, that are motivated to sell their newer campers. And newer, I mean within the last 10 years or so. And I've seen some of these combos pop up on Facebook Marketplace, truck and camper, different brands, different styles, and some nice stuff for like newer stuff for very reasonable prices. In fact, you could probably get, I saw one this morning, a truck and a camper. I think they were about 5-6 years old, for the same price as just the camper cost new. That's a pretty good value, and not a lot of miles on the components. See, I think the truck had 60 or 70,000 miles on it, so it's a fairly young truck. So you could do this far more inexpensively than buying new stuff. Some people want new stuff, and I was one of them, and I get that. I thought when I retire, I want to have a brand new truck, a brand new camper, and I want to just use it until the end of time, and when I'm gone, my kids can take care of what's left. And kind of that's my plan. But if you want to do this really cheaply, you can, and you can do it safely too. And then there's the debate, and the question I get a lot is, why don't I use a pull-type trailer? For the cost of this thing, why aren't you in a pull-type trailer? And I understand that. This thing costs a pile of money. Why don't I want to pull a trailer? Well, the places I take this to, some trailheads in the mountains, if I want to do a scramble or a hike, a multi-day hike, I can leave this in a parking lot. This big truck has a shorter turning radius, actually, this F450 than the F350. I can turn it around anywhere, and it fits into very tight spots. I can't get a 30-foot pull trailer and a truck into some of these trailheads. It's just physically not possible. And if you drove in there, you might not be able to back it out, because you sure aren't turning around in there with a camper like that. That's why I have a truck and truck camper, because it's more versatile for my needs. I didn't buy it because it has more space. I didn't buy it because it was cheaper, because truck campers per square foot are more expensive than pull-type trailers. By far, they've always been that way, because the cost of putting something together like this, jammed into that small space, is higher than a pull-type camper. And so they cost more per square foot, and they don't sell as many of them. That's another reason. So for everyone that's asking, why didn't I go for that? Well, I can't have that. I can't utilize that platform for what I want to do. Plus, I also hook a trailer behind this camper and pull a Land Cruiser on it, and I can't do that pulling a travel type trailer, so that doesn't work for my needs. And growing up, I always wanted a truck and truck camper. That's kind of what I had gravitated to from a long time ago. So that's where my mindset was at when I purchased mine. Whatever people with pull type trailers, and I've owned pull trailers before, several of them. At this point in my life, it wouldn't suit the purposes that I need an RV for. Well, that'll be the end of this video. The opinions here are just my own from some of the questions I've received. Keep in mind there are many safe ways to do the same thing. You don't have to do it my way. You can do it your way, and you can do it safely. There's lots of ways to do that. We're all responsible for what we're driving down the road and the safety of other users on the road, so keep that in mind. And everybody have a safe summer and have some adventures, and thanks for watching.